to take a look at the damage. It's got to be pretty jarring, huh, Curtis?
Absolutely, Neil. And what I see again and again and again is these catch basins, these sewers, these receptacles of water that were built long ago into our streets, long ago into our transit systems, are not being cleaned on a regular basis, so they're filled with gunk and garbage and debris. So when you have an extraordinary natural disaster like this take place, you're going to have a lot of backup. I was out in a condo scenario of homes in Staten Island, and the catch basins did not work. You could see the garbage was percolating from the catch basins. And so the water came gushing through the basement, gushing through the faucets, gushing through the bathrooms. And that's really what caused most of the damage. If the city, through the Department of Environmental Protection, would actually do what the sewer workers used to do on a weekly basis years ago, I'm not saying there wouldn't be any damage, but there wouldn't be the kind of damage we're seeing now, and we just saw recently when they had to cancel that concert in Central Park, which was sort of the highlight of Bill de Blasio's administration, and even that he couldn't do right.
You know, it's interesting, too, that a lot of the politicians who were gathered around for that sort of look at what happened afterwards seem to be blaming the weather people, that they weren't warned about this. Now, truth be told, of course, the weather people did tell us about the warnings of flash floods, the possibility of 3 to 6 inches of rain and more. So, you know, that's easy to check. And of course, the National Weather Center, others locally here in New York, all the local stations were quite accurate in their forecasts here. So what did you make of that politicians saying, we didn't see this coming?
Well, you know, that's a page out of Andrew Cuomo. He blamed weather forecasters years ago for storms and inclement weather. Instead, he was going to form his own weather bureau in the state of New York. We were going to pay for that. Boy, yeah, that would really be dependable. We had plenty of warnings. Our iPhones, our smartphones were singing and ringing with warnings. But we have a lot of men and women who have been permitted to live in basement apartments. These are illegal developments. Some of them are subdivisions. Some of them have never been inspected by the Department of Buildings. And we basically close our eyes to it. So when these floods come cascading through, if you notice, most of the damage is done in basements. That's generally where people would tend to have a TV room or a playroom or store a lot of their paraphernalia. But it's not generally a place where a lot of people would live. And we have a city in which, tens of thousands of people illegally live in basements. Unfortunately, some of them perished. Some of them were severely injured. But none of these officials who were responsible for that are going to do anything to amend the situation to make sure people live safely and not in the basements of huge apartment buildings and also of other developments, whether they're 1-family, 2-family, or 3-family dwellings.
Right. We don't know the breakdown of all of these basement residents and whether they were living in illegal, homes that were retrofitted against the better rules of New York. We're trying to find that out. But I did want to get your thoughts on Chuck Schumer saying if this doesn't prove that we need infrastructure, nothing will. Now, I thought at first he was initially talking about the bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure plan that I think, Curtis, you support, but he extended it to the far more expensive $3.5 trillion, some say $5 trillion human infrastructure plan. Your thoughts?
Exactly. A lot of it that has absolutely nothing to do with the nuts and bolts of infrastructure. We need tunnels for mass transportation because these tunnels are crumbling. I think everybody can agree. If we can't massive numbers of people in and out of our major municipalities, we can't bring in a workforce, it's going to cripple our economy. But then when all of a sudden it delves into social issues instead of construction issues, that's when you begin to say, Neil, wait a second, infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, roads, sewers, catch basins, all of which we need either fixed or we need new ones to replace old ones. That's where the money should be going. And when all of a sudden Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate and shot caller for the Democrats, starts veering us into that path, We're never going to see the traditional sewers and catch basins cleaned up, or at least widened and enlarged so that they can transport massive amounts of wastewater into nearby rivers and nearby basins.
You know, Curtis, we've talked a number of times. I think it's important that everyone get a chance to hear you, because to hear a lot of people tell it in New York City, you're not going to win, Eric Adams is going to win, and he'll win in a romp. And when you hear that, does it bother you?
Well, I'll give you a comparison. Yesterday, I was mucking out sewer pipes in Forest Hills, Queens, which is a upper middle class area. And I was showing the residents how this gunk has accumulated over the years, and it really has to be tended to. And the city's not going to do it, then the individual owner operators of their building are going to have to do it. And Eric Adams was immediately saying Curtis doesn't know what he's talking about. He's talking about floating New York City, a floating city. And I said, this guy is in a drug-induced psychosis. I don't know if he's smoking Maui Wowie or Hindu Kush. Does he understand it would cost trillions of dollars to float a city like New York City, which is built on granite? The island of Manhattan is pure granite. That's why you can build these skyscrapers. And he goes on and on. So we should be more like Europe. And I'm saying that's what Bernie the Altakaka Sanders was always saying at AOC, all out crazy. We should be like Denmark. We should be like Holland. No, we should be like America. We can rebuild, we can restructure, and we can build new structures. That's what all that money should be going for. And I could actually pinpoint as mayor all the places that were desperately in need of it.
All right. You know, we did reach out to Eric Adams, and we continue to do so. We haven't heard back, but hope springs eternal. But I did want to get your thoughts. The other day I was talking to John Catsimatidis. He's a good friend of yours, thinks you're a great guy. Nevertheless, he was hosting a fundraiser out in the Hamptons for Eric Adams. And I asked him about it. This is from Catsimatidis. Take a look. So did you have to tell Curtis, look, I'm doing this fundraiser for Eric Adams, hope you don't mind? How did that go down?
No, I told Curtis we support him 100%. But Eric Adams came out with common sense thinking. He came out with pro-business approach. He came out with helping the police as an ex-NYPD policeman himself. And people, look, we want all business people that love New York want hope. They want to make sure that our city is safe.
He really didn't answer my question. He's a good friend of yours, thinks he'd be a great mayor, but he's hosting a fundraiser for Eric Adams. Did that bug you?
Look, Neil, this was explained to us by Citizen Trump. You remember when Donald Trump was campaigning for the presidency? I gave to everybody, so I would have influence with everybody. And I think John Catsimatidis, a very astute businessman, my boss, remember, at WABC Talk Radio.
Yes, indeed.
He has an incredible number of contacts with elected officials, Republican and Democrat, liberal and conservative, and
but you
he's always donating to their cause.
A little bit. You got to be heard just a teeny bit.
No, actually, Neil, not hurt, because I can go into neighborhoods where the only Republican they've ever seen is Abraham Lincoln on a $5 bill. And that's the benefit I have, is I got street cred. I may not have cred in the suites with the men and women that you talk to on a regular basis, but in the hood, in the neighborhoods, in the streets, I got the street cred.
Curtis, all right, thank you very, very much. Curtis Sliwa. And again, we talk to anyone and everyone, but Curtis should be heard, just like we hope, at least on this network, Eric Adams will. Fair and balanced to everybody. But is it really fair when you just pretend one candidate isn't even in the race? You just heard him. Don't you think more people should? We'll have more after this.